our viewers on this beautiful Sunday of August. My name is Sidima Bua, and I'm the anchor of this discussion. But I've got Umfundisi Gxamza, Umfundisi from Calvary Methodist Church. Umfundisi Wam, can you just give us a brief outline as to what brings us here today?
Well, thank you very much, Brother Stima. I would like also to take this opportunity to greet you and to greet all the viewers of Central TV. And thank you to you and everyone who was involved in putting this program together, where we get an opportunity really to share our thoughts and perhaps, if at all possible, to get to some of the root causes as to why we find ourselves where we are in relation to issues that affect women. And so I hope as we engage, the fundamental and primary question for me is to then perhaps to ask, what is it that has made women and their struggles to only be vented out in the month of August, but also has somehow made women to be one of the reactionary, sectors of society. And perhaps if time allows, we will try and get to the root cause. And because you have invited Umfundisi, obviously my frame of reference, I would always begin from the Bible and perhaps look at what Wesley is saying about women and come to what I think is the root cause of the challenges that women face today.
Indlela ndofundisa ndiyavumelana nawe bana uba si reference back to iBhayibhile indlela enhle yoba nencoko ngezinto ezithile kuba ke yonke into iqale eBhayibhelini. Ndiyabulela uba usitsho mfundisi wami.
Well, I think perhaps the best way to move forward, I have structured my contribution to this program in trying to unravel and in trying to look at the deeper issues beneath what the surface provides. And I have decided to look at what the Bible says about women.
Yes.
And I have then looked at what Wesley, as a Methodist, says about women. And I hope after I have done that, we'll get an opportunity together to bring both these, the Bible and looking at Wesley, considering that everything rises out of a particular context.
Yes.
And then begin to look at how did we get to where we are today. Because if you look at the Bible for an example, you will realize if you read the book of Genesis in particular, which is the book of beginnings, which allows us and provides us with what science cannot provide us with. Well, that provides us with what geography and history cannot fully provide us with. Sure. And you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 11, and you also look at chapter 5, verse 2. There is no suggestion in the Bible that women were created a little lesser than men. You get a sense in the Bible that women were created equally. And so in the language of the Bible, being sensitive to the traditions that are there, you realize, as the book of Genesis chapter 5 verse 2 says, that God created them male and female. And that alone is the suggestion of the equality of men and women. Because in the language of the Bible, if you liberate it and you look at it in its correct context, you realize that God created humanity. And you will appreciate that some of the challenges that today women face are somehow predicated upon a wrong hermeneutic of the scriptures. There are those who say that God created a man and made a woman. And so the status of a woman, you realize that is secondary. It's second to what a man is. But I'm saying that those who are saying that it's because they do not appreciate that those who compiled the Bible as it was being put together, there were issues of culture and tradition that were at play. I usually say to people, you can never teach what you do not know or what you have never been taught. Are we together? And now, we need, therefore, to begin by correcting some of those misconceptions when it comes to women. And the only other thing that perhaps it's important for us to note when it comes to the Bible is that in the language of the Bible, men and women were created equally and yet with distinct roles. So whilst we are equal in creation, but as you can tell also, if you look at science, the generic conception, you will realize that we've got distinct roles.
Yes.
And this is by no means, according to the Bible, a right to ill-treat, to subjugate, and abuse women. Are we together? So I thought the very most important point to begin with is to correct that notion that women are created a little lesser than what men or women are. But I say and I submit without any fear of contradiction that they were created equally. Whilst they are equal, and yet they have distinct roles. Yeah. Are we together? Now, we are equal, but like if in a lack of a better word, not the same. So our roles, we are not supposed to compete. We are supposed to complement each other in the language of the Bible, if it is read in its correct context. And the hermeneutic also is correct, that is being applied to interpret the scriptures.
Ndibulela mfundisi bana uyivelele indaba yobana man was created, or a woman was created out of man. But interestingly, understanding yam has always been that lubambo, so usuke ecaleni kwendoda. Ngoko uyaba lubambo lwakhe indlela yakhe yonke, which is apha endleleni bayasebenzisana. Uba ndikuva kakuhle mfundisi wam.
Yeah, correctly, you are correct, Brother Stima, in saying that. And I think if you are going to take the narrative that is in chapter 1 of the book of the Bible, because you realize there is chapter 1 when it comes to this story, and there is chapter 2.
Yes.
But if we were to pursue and follow that line of thought, it would not be correct to conclude there and not go further to say, when Adam saw Eve, Adam said, there comes a bone of my bone. And a declaration which was affirming in its own nature. So I'm saying this, the issue when it comes to these stories are issues of tradition. That some of the people that tend to interpret these stories, they tend to overlook the context that produced the stories as we have them today. But even if you look at that one, it ends with a declaration which is affirming in its own nature. Are we together? So it's important that and you are correct to highlight that the purpose of the pulling out of the rib, it's actually should be interpreted in line with companionship.
Yes.
And has nothing to do with domination.
No, 100%.
Are we together?
100%.
Now, that is where then the problem is. And those who advance this narrative, they tend to overlook the reality and what the scripture provides on Genesis chapter 1.
Okay. Mfundisi, I think it would be nice if abanye babaphulaphuli bethu emakhaya bane different understanding or a complete understanding ayicacanga ngohlobo icacise ngalo bake bakuvakashele pha Calvary Methodist Church bazoyiva kanye kuwe ngohlobo ithetha ngalo mfundisi.
Well, yes, I would encourage that as well, also to follow us online. I think it would be important for them, the viewers, to also follow us online. But I wanted also to move using the Bible, having used it as the primary source that reaches where science cannot reach, where theories, where philosophies cannot reach. Even Darwin, one of the celebrated philosophers who philosophized, the theory of evolution, how things came about. He proposed a nonsensical approach of how men came, in particular when it comes to black people, evolved from apes and as time went by. But he cannot reach to where the Bible can actually reach. But I also wanted to move further. As a Methodist and as a Wesleyan in spirituality, guided by the Wesleyan quadrilateral, I also asked myself, what did Wesley and some of our founding fathers said about women? What was their attitude? Are we together? Now, you will realize and appreciate that Wesley emerged in the 18th century, a century of great historic significance, because that was the century of enlightenment. That was the century where people emphasized the transcendence of God and ignored the immanence. They believed that it is within their right to shape the world as they see fit. Are we together? Now, you would appreciate that Wesley in the 18th century, I want to quote here, apart from saying to you, you know that the one person who had great significance and influence in the life of Wesley was Wesley's mother, Susan, who is the one who taught Wesley and Wesley's siblings to read and to write before they joined, formal education as we have and understand it today. Appreciating that, Wesley, as history tells us, Susan would sit in the kitchen with her children and teach them to pray, teach them to write, teach them to read. She went as further when one is celebrating a birthday, calling the rest of them to come and tell this one celebrating the birthday what they like and appreciate about the one whose birthday is being celebrated. Now, we are talking of the 18th century. That is as far back as the 1700s in terms of the year. Now, in 1752, and Wesley, I'm bringing this because there is a writing called A Plain Reader, which was written by Wesley. And Wesley made an assertion which tends to be misinterpreted. In that assertion, Wesley said, it is dangerous to depart from scriptures, saying that we run a risk And there is a danger that was being pervasive in those years of people who tended to rise above what is written.
Yes.
Are we together? And those who wanted to use Wesley in supporting the argument of ill-treating and subjugating women, Wesley said we should never deviate from what is written in the scripture. And they drew from the scriptures that women must be quiet in the church.
With an agenda.
Are we together? Now, what they never tell you is that in 1752, Sarah Crosby joined the Methodist Church. This is the female. Okay? And also in 1771, another prominent woman in the church, Mary Bonsquet, wrote to Wesley to encourage Wesley to provide space for Sarah to be one of the lay preachers of the Methodist movement.
Okay.
So I without any fear of contradiction, I say this, that Wesley was one of those who championed the emancipation of women. Because it is recorded that in 1776, Bosquet, the one who wrote and pleaded for Mary to be offered an opportunity, was herself a lay preacher, and people came from all corners of the world to listen to her powerful and fervent message. Are we together? In the language of Wesley usually says you must catch the fire when you are a preacher, and people will come from all corners of life to watch you burn, talking about the passion that preachers should have. And so Wesley was one of the champions of the program of the emancipation of women. He herself gave them an opportunity. So there was never a reason, there should never be a reason to question Methodism when it comes to issues of women. I want to bring it to our own context and say that one of the first churches to ordain women was the Methodist Church of Southern Africa by Oosthuizen. The first woman was Oosthuizen. We are amongst the first churches, if not the first, in the mainline churches who elect and induct a woman into a position of a bishop in the name of the current presiding bishop, Purity Mal, before she became the presiding bishop and sat in the chair, as we would call it, of John Wesley.
Yes.
Before that, she was a bishop, the pastor of pastors in the Natal, then Coastal District, now Synod. So we have always been in the forefront as the Wesleyan and as the Methodist when it comes to issues of the emancipation of women. But that does not mean things are different. Let me pause there.
Okay, Mfundisi. No, ndiyakuva Mfundisi wami. I think Mfundisi, into that comes to mind as you are discussing this is that we have a point of reference and we've become progressive over time as people and as a nation. And I think some of us from the rural of the Eastern Cape coming to the modern society, and I think we tend to hold that tradition. Yobana xa uyindoda uyindoda kukuviwa ngawe. And I would love to hear your commentary around that, Mfundisi, in the context of sisiwinyanga yomama. Kwenye ixesha uyafana bana umuntu ongumama uyacinezeleka kuba utata ufuna uvela bengutata. Ava kuvakala ilizwi lakhe kube nguye ogqibelelayo professional spaces, women also tend to be bacinezelwa ixesha elininzi na in society nje ithini comment yakho mfundisi in relation to that, and maybe sidibanise nale history uvela nayo ngoku.
You know, Brother Stima, I think now we have come to the gist to how did we get to where we are. And I think we need to appreciate history. And I want to make a submission, a bold and a daring submission, that we are where we are because of a system. That the system structures how we as society operate. And the name of the system, it's capitalism. Now, women, it's important to say this, are an integral part of society. In fact, one of the early church fathers, Tertullian, says, if God is the father, then the church is the mother. Because in the African proverb, mother or woman is second to God. So it's God's number 2. Are we together? And Tertullian says, when he talks of the church, gives the church the features and the attributes of a mother, saying, if God is the father, then the church has got to be the mother. So women are an integral part of society. And the issue and the struggles of women did not begin now, today, in 2021. They have got a long history. Are we together? And I blame, Brother Stima, I blame the system that has structured society. And the system, it's capitalism. And if you were to ask me to define what capitalism is, I would say capitalism is the enemy of the people. Finish. Are we together? This is the system by its very nature, design and conception. It leads to antagony. It leads to conflicts and sections people into classes. You may remember that I said, what is it that makes the struggles, the challenges, or that makes women themselves to become one of the reactionary classes of society? To a point that we talk of the struggles of women in August. But in January to December, you don't hear. Are we together? Because of this system. And those who are champions of this system, Stima, will talk about something called, they call it social justice.
Yeah.
Why justice should be social? Do you know why? It's because it's justice that needs to operate within the capitalist framework. Let me take you back so that you get to understand the issue and what I think is at the center, at the core of the problem. If you are a reader of history, as I do, you would realize that even those who are in political science will talk of Marx and Marxists who drew up a structure when it comes to issues of capitalism. The structure by its own design, there are people that are on top and there are people that are at the bottom, meaning the masses. By its very design, the survival of that system is division. Now, power by its own nature, power survives through division. Now, that system is what introduced us to the phrases such as patriarchy. Are we together, Brother Stim? You know, these phrases such as patriarchy are actually introduced. They are capitalist, phrases. Phrases that seek to elevate one over the other, and most importantly, to create a conflict and section, society into different compartments. That is how we got to where we are today. I'm not sure. I hope I'm not confusing you.
No, ndiyavakala mfundisi wami. Ndicinga ubana mfundisi masihlabele mgama. Let's move forward with our discussion. And I would like you to take me, because you've given us the history, you've brought it to how women got inducted into the Methodist Church. Can you take me a little bit forward in terms of what else is on your mind and what else you want to unpack in this discussion?
Well, I think Brother Stima, if I may, I would say that this system manifests in different forms.
Okay.
It would manifest in a form of culture.
All right.
It would manifest also in religious structures. And really in what you see in the secular world.
Yes.
It is what gives us the checklist to check. They have something that they say it's gender equality. And I do not know what that is supposed to mean. Culture is what makes you, and tradition, to say those of us from the outskirts of the Eastern Cape, we want to remain men. It's because you were taught by the framework of culture, which seeked to relegate women to the back. And yet, if you appreciate that culture is not static, but culture is dynamic, you get also to appreciate that the women have always been the custodian, because they are the depositories of the tradition of the people. In fact, it is Sankara who says, if you want to check, in paraphrasing what he said, the effect and the impact of and the progress of society, you need to look on how women in that society behave. I usually say about the church that the church is a barometer of social morality. Now, women are a yardstick of the progress of society, because not only are they depository of the traditions, they then become calabashes and people who preserve those traditions. Hence, I said earlier, whilst we are created equal, we've got distinct roles to play. Are we together? Now, once culture is used to oppress, ill-treat, and subjugate, it needs to be approached with suspicion. And such a culture should not, such cultural practice should never be accorded respectability. Such culture. Are we making sense? So some of the things that you see in society, in fact in churches and other institutions, are in fact mirrors the problem that is in society. Are we together? So these are manifestations. And the root cause, I doubt that the root cause are men. I don't deny that there is an element of spiritual disturbia on men.
Yes.
I do not deny that there are elements that need to be dealt with when it comes to men, on how men relate to women. But what we also need to talk about is what causes them. One writer, I think it was Sankara, who talked about material dialectism. That the system has made people unequal. And inevitable, it leads to conflicts. Because the one who has power and has domination and has influence. Are we together? And I think that issues of women, what I would say, we need to place women in their rightful position.
No, ndiyava mfundisi wami. But I think what's important, and I'm able to draw from one of your last statements, is he who has got power.
Yes.
So I think it's important to possibly convey to our viewers that being in the know is actually being able to have power and some control in terms of how you deal with certain things and how you react. And I think what I loved about our discussion, Fundis, is that I understood that uyathanda ufunda, but I think it's becoming more apparent that you are in love with books and you are in love with knowledge. And I think that to our viewers, it is encouraged that on our page you comment and ask questions. Let's create a conversation around this foundation that we've just discussed, Nomfundisi, and let's converse and have discussions. Ask questions, probing questions, because to sit with wanting to know and not ask, you will not get help. And I think that's the important take from my side. Amazokubela Mfundisi, last words.
In what you have said, there is an old, even though I may not like the one who wrote it, but he was correct that the mind remains the standard of the man.
Yes.
And I think it's important, knowledge. It used to be said that knowledge is power. Brother Stima, women continue to be killed. Women continue to be ill-treated and subjugated. Women continue to experience worse forms of violence. And I said earlier that the system and the framework, because the system provides the framework, which has told us that you are a man, you should not cry. It is not God who said that, that you are a man, you should not cry. It is the system. The enemy of the people is actually the system. And we need to collapse the system. The system that leaves society in different classes. The system that creates the framework and point of reference that makes it okay for you to think that you can inflict pain on your fellow human being. And andifuni ukuhlala apha and to your viewers and be dishonest. I said the system manifests in different forms, and I have mentioned culture, and I have mentioned religion, amongst other things. And we need to approach those cultural practices that have a tendency of abusing, ill-treating, subjugating women into forms of, unthinkable abuses. Are we together? We also need to evaluate, as someone who is within a religious structure, some of our religious practices which have an element of dehumanizing women, that have an element of leaving them in one way or the other naked, with no sense of dignity. We need and reject those kind of practices, because it is not the will of God that we should be abusing women with the rate that they are being abused. One of my greatest cries, Stima, kukubona abafazi bezizixhobo sokulimaza abanye abafazi. Mna, I think considering that, if we look at it in a, with the lens of class struggles, women should avoid being weapons of ill-treating other women. Society.
It happens, Mfundisi.
There are women who prefer to work with men because they can't work with other women. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. So I think one of the things, I think we need to rise and begin to wage a struggle against the system that elevates others to, this system, Stima, is the system that creates in women supermen, in women. Ile eyenza into yoba abantu abangomama athi because ndingumama. I mean, who has questioned that ngumama? Why should you tell us? But the system has taught us. It is the system that creates super
Nature.
within women themselves. To a point that those who are privileged are now agents of the oppression of those that are underprivileged. Are we together? Let's talk about rape. There are women who go and defend men who are accused of rape. Kwezi is an example. Because I was involved in the funeral of Kwezi. There were women who were at the center of protecting and defending those and the one who was accused of raping Kwezi. It's women, mfowethu, who, when someone is reported to have, other molested a child, even on things that we get on the grapevine, it's women who hide those kind of behaviors. And I am saying, we need to wage a struggle against that. There is no favor, Stima, that we need to do for women. They just need to occupy their rightful place as the backbone of society, as the vanguard of the progress, not only the progress, but also as custodians of tradition and also as vehicles of change. No favor needs to be done, but they also need to be courageous enough and confront the system that makes it difficult for them to work together as women, the system that makes it right for one woman to stand against other women and the development and the livelihood, of other women. I'm not sure if I...
No, ngikhanyisele mfundisi.
Thank you.
No, kuyakhanya. Ndithi ndiqomba sifike ekuqhubeleni kwenkqubo yethu. Mfundisi wami, amazwi okugqibela, last words.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have not received the engagement, perhaps that may have been coming online. But I think that, women need to occupy their rightful place.
Yes.
There is no favor that needs to be done by anyone. They need to rise and wage a struggle, but they cannot do it alone. We need to join hands because the enemy is common. It is the system that is making women to be in a constant catch-up program.
Yes.
The same system that is making Africans and other sections of society to be in a continuous catch-up kind of a program. And so women, we need to hold hands and wage the struggle to collapse the system. I have asked on Wednesday, why are we as the church in particular not seen in the picket lines when people are standing against issues relating to service delivery? When Wesley said that, in particular as Methodist, ours is to spread scriptural holiness. Why are we comfortable to pray behind closed doors when people are out there and people are waging and are struggle against the basic needs of humanity? Why are we not there? And the question that maybe we need to ask, why are we not joining hands? Why are we not hearing the loudest of all voices when it comes to women? Have we asked Mfowethu, the voice of the wives of those who lost their lives in Marikana? It's the question I was asking on Wednesday. And no one the media also seems to be busy to even pay attention to the livelihoods of those who lost their husbands. This is the year that is known to be the year of Charlotte Maxeke. And lately I have seen, I think, perhaps let me put it this way, I think likes of Charlotte Maxeke are larger than just one organization. And I think it needs to be appreciated. I know that sometimes we would want to claim monopoly and say that, every prominent person, like Biko, you would hear now that everyone is claiming Biko when Biko, we know where Biko belonged.
Yes.
But, people like Biko, Sobuko and Maxeke, they are larger than just one organization because these are not only national but also international figures.
Yes.
You know what gave motivation and impetus to Charlotte Maxeke? Is that Charlotte Maxeke visited, went to start in America, went there first to sing, but later got a scholarship. Okay. And Charlotte Maxeke saw in the areas where Africans, where the African heart was beginning to look and search for another African heart. During the time and the influence of the like of Marcus Garvey, Dr. W.E. Du Bois, our founding African fathers. And she was exposed to the potential capabilities and abilities of black people. Charlotte's uncle, Reverend Mukuna Mangena, was a Methodist minister who at the time wanted to resign and leave the church. She was encouraged by Charlotte. I'm saying this so that we can begin to unleash potential of women and other subjugated sectors of society. Because their struggle is not unique. It's the struggle that we are also engaged in. Now, when she was exposed and the uncle wrote to her, and Charlotte wrote back to say, you can do it. Because the uncle Mukuna complained that Africans are not honored amongst white ministers. They are treated more like evangelists, second to what a minister in the press should be. And he went further to say the more a black minister humbles himself, is the more they ridicule that black minister. And said, look, I have seen it here. This is what Charlotte said in the letter. I have seen it here in America. Those were the southern parts of America. I have seen it. I have seen black people putting and pulling resources together, running businesses that are thriving, taking children to school, progressive in every way possible, said to her uncle, go out and stand on your own. And she linked Mukuna with the Ethiopian church in America. Hence, Mukuna rose and led the Methodist Ethiopian church in Africa. It had Ethiopian. So I am saying in this year of Charlotte, maybe it is time that we hear the voice that says, women, we have seen it. You are not children of a lesser God.
Yes.
You need to rise. You can do it on your own. We have seen it being done before. If Charlotte could emerge and rise, what is preventing our women today to rise?
To do the same.
If those courageous women who left their children at home and their husbands could march to the union buildings, what is preventing our women today? And you'll agree with me again, the enemy is the system, because the system turns women against women, turns Africans against Africans, turns the oppressed against the oppressed. The system is what we need to deal with decisively. And I am saying this system should not be accorded any form of respectability. After all, those of us who are followers of Christ, Christ said, I have come so that you may have life and have it in its fullness. Not just one section of the population and the people, not just men, not just those who are, in the cycles that govern, but all men. And Wesley, in closing, would say, all men, therefore, need to be saved. And they can be saved in the uttermost level. To you and to your viewers, I just want to thank you for an opportunity really to share some of my thoughts. And really, and I always say this, that I do not claim monopoly of wisdom. Yes. But I think when I get an opportunity such as this one, it allows me an opportunity to test some of these views that I feel strongly about. And to your viewers, a feedback is always important when it comes to this issue, so that tomorrow we can improve also and sharpen some of these ideas. And to you and all the organizers of this program, I want to thank you most sincerely for an opportunity.
I'm humbled.
Amen.
I'm humbled. Thank you.